Okay, so we've already talked about the goal of this, right? We're going to add 30 to 50 feet to how far you can hit the ball by adding 5 miles an hour of bat speed. So this is a system really quickly that I started to implement with my own kids, and I'll get into how this works. But when my son was 8, this is him. This is Jimmy. He's my oldest. I have 5 kids. We'll be talking about my 2 oldest today with how we've trained them to hit for power. He did not make his 8U All-Star team. He's not that athletic of a kid, but he really liked the game. And so I was really trying to find a way to help him develop. And fast forward to the age of 15, he steps onto his first ever high school field at 370 to center and hits this home run out of the big park. So that's pretty awesome. Not a lot of kids can do that as a freshman, but there was a very definite process that we followed to make that happen. And then it really worked. And that's what we're going to be covering over the next 3 days. Specifically today, we'll be talking about identifying the power leaks in their swing and how to do that. And then this is my daughter. So this is my daughter when she was young. Obviously, she didn't roll out of the womb knowing how to swing either. And so we repeated this same process with her that we'll be sharing with you today. Let me turn this down. And when she was 12, she ended up hitting her first home run, and she's going to jack this one out. Actually, the bases are loaded. She yells at me. She likes to say, it wasn't a home run, Dad. It was a grand slam. But she actually hits it out to the opposite field. She's a 12U player here playing in a 14U showcase. They were playing up that weekend. And the really important thing that I like to share about all this is when you look at how tall she is, you see as she crosses home plate, she's not the tallest girl on the team. She was the second smallest girl on this team. And so this works even if you are a big kid or a small kid. And so we're going to be diving into that. Okay. So this is for baseball or softball players. It is the same process. Parents or coaches who want and know their kids need to hit the ball harder. It's for athletes who didn't necessarily win the genetic lottery. My daughter was born with some athleticism, but no height. My son was born with the height, but no athleticism. It works for both. And if you don't want to have to hire or become a full-time hitting coach to get the results you're after, like this is the hack that I'm excited to share with you. So, I call these power patterns, or I should say there are such things as power patterns. And if you pay attention to these, this is why people like Jose Altuve at 5 foot, whatever he is, can compete with people who are 6'7", 6'8", or whatever Judge is, and still be in the home run club, which we like to call, if you can hit over 30 home runs a year, 25 home runs a year in the bigs, like you're doing something right. So why can the little guy do it when the big guy and keep up with the big guy? Not that he's as good, but why can he do that? And the answer is there's some certain patterns that his body pays attention to, and we need to know what these patterns are so that we can then look at your athlete to see if there's something that they're doing wrong that we can identify. Okay, so my goal for this web class is for you to realize that the only way that we're going to help your kids hit as hard as possible is to help them move like those little boppers, the little Jose Altuves. We need to learn how their movement patterns are working so that we can then train your athlete how to move in these more explosive new patterns. Okay, so that's my goal here for this class and for the next couple of days, is to talk about the different elements of this. Okay, so this is something that I discovered when I was a kid. When I was 16, I was a sophomore in high school. I had been getting lessons from Gonzaga University's hitting coach. This is a shot of Gonzaga University. And he really taught me how to barrel the ball, not unlike a lot of other hitting coaches out there. They teach you how to hit the ball on the barrel. And I'd had him as a coach for a couple of years, and I could hit for average, but I could not hit the ball out of the park as a sophomore. And so I ended up reading an ad in the back of a Baseball Weekly magazine, and I went on to respond to that ad, and it helped me. Actually, I should come back here. The ad said that it could add 50 feet to how far I could hit the ball in 5 to 10 weeks. And so I was like, it probably sounds like a scam. But I ended up sending in for this course. It got delivered to me. They've since gone out of business, but it taught me some principles that we'll be sharing here today that totally not only helped me hit the ball 50 feet further, it actually added 100 feet to how far I could hit the ball over the course of a whole year. So it totally worked. I then went on my senior year. I won my high school league MVP out in Spokane, Washington. And I eventually got to go play some Division I baseball. I made the University of California Irvine squad. I am the little guy here in the front. Where they put all the little guys. I'm only 5'10"-ish. So the only reason I made this team is because of how hard I could hit. Now, I'm not a stud. Like, I wasn't like, oh, the best Division I player. I don't share that with you to like other people will often do. Like, oh, I played D1. I'm amazing. Like, I hardly played. I was a bad defender. I couldn't throw very well, but I could hit the ball really hard, and that's why I made the team. So I won't get into all the reasons I was not a great player, but I had enough power at 5'10" that a Division I team wanted me. And so that was pretty cool. I got to go live in Irvine, California with all these guys, had a great time. And so those are the things that I want to share with you. So when I had kids, I was like, well, we're going to teach this stuff to them too. And more and more people are starting to pay attention that this really does matter. So bat speed is mattering. A lot of people are like, we want to train for batting average, not bat speed. Well, take a look at this chart. If you have bat speeds in the big leagues that are over 80 miles an hour, your batting average is 321. If your batting average is under 69 miles an hour, you're hitting 202. Now, there's some other factors, of course, but bat speed matters because your miss hits end up going farther. They end up being more likely to get through. And then when you do barrel the ball, it's over everybody's head, and they can't catch that either. So it just works. So you want more bat speed as long as you aren't going to sacrifice contact quality, which is what we are going to be talking about in some of the other days of this training for how to actually do that stuff. Okay. So if you have been struggling with like not hitting for power, this stuff is probably why. And there's 3 secrets that I want to talk about in training for power in today's presentation. Number 1, we need to be able to plug the power leaks in your swing. So we're going to talk about how to identify those leaks, and in the hitting, I accidentally have throwing in here, but just the hitting, and train your body to fire faster. Then we're going to talk about the neural recruitment training windows and why there's actually a limited amount of time for developing a kid's explosive rotational power. It closes before you get to puberty, or it starts to, so you want to make sure that that's happening. I could have even hit for more power if I had discovered this before high school. And then we're going to be talking about something called swing plyometrics, and how we can actually train the nervous system to fire faster and actually build more fast twitch muscle fibers into our body instead of the slow twitch ones that we don't want as baseball players. There's actually science behind this. So we're going to be going into all these things. So first, let's talk about how to plug the power leaks. Okay. Sorry, talking too early, a little dry in the mouth here. Any questions so far about all this stuff? Put them in the chat if there are, because I can't see the chat, so the assistant will get it to you. Okay, what are power leaks? So let's talk about this. So the swing can generate the maximum amount of power when it works in this order. You want to have your hips twist first, then your shoulders, then your arm, then your wrists. If you fire in this order, then and you learn how to fire your body in this order, your body will produce more force than it will if you like go hands first. Okay. So this is the order that you need to fire in. And they figured out how to measure this. So this is a chart, and don't get overwhelmed by this. It's not that hard. The red line is measuring the speeds of the hips. The green is measuring the speeds of the torso. The blue is measuring the arm. The brown, orange, whatever this is measuring the hand. So we have, degrees per second being measured here, and then over time. And so what's happening is the pelvis reaches its peak speed first, and then if we do things right, the next segment, which is the shoulders, should catapult faster than that. Then the blue segment should go even faster than that, because each one is being pulled by the one below it. Okay, and so this is an example of that right order when done correctly. The other thing that you will notice is what happens if you want to send all the people in the boat forward. How fast you stop the boat makes the next segment, all those people go forward faster. And so you'll notice after this peak speeds are reached of each segment, let's just take the red line, which is the pelvis, it quickly dives off. So the pelvis fires really fast, and then it also stops really fast. And so that has to be a second quality that we are training. How can we speed it up, and how can we slow it down? So, and how can we be in the right order? Those are where like the leaks and the big wins are, if we can figure out how to train those things in kids. So as an example of this, if you're trying to spin a peanut butter jar and you're just spinning the lid, imagine the upper body is the top of the lid, and the bottom, the lower body is the jar. You can't create any torque if you don't hold the base of the jar of the peanut butter. So, and if you want to create the maximum amount of torque, you'll actually go the opposite directions. And so that's what we have to be able to train the body how to do. It's like cracking a whip or a wet towel. You're going to whip somebody. The casting it forward is the moving forward, and then you have to pull it back and stop it so that it whips at the end. And when we want to increase the speeds of things, we have to have those movement patterns. Okay. So we do this, and you saw an option for a free trial to our power hacking coaching program, where we can do what I'm about to show you. Okay. So we can measure how all these things are happening. So what we have here is we have an assessment. So when you sign up, there was an option to take a 14-day free trial. You can still, I'll pop up a link here if you want to still take that trial. But what happens is we can measure some things. So when you send in footage, we can measure the order your body is firing in. So right here, for example, her pelvis fired second, the arms fired first, and the hands fired third, and they're not in the right order. And then if you look closely, do you see how her pelvis is going 620 degrees a second, and then her arm is going slower? It's only going 540, and then the hands are only going barely faster, 570. So they're not dramatically increasing like they were on the speeds before. And so that's what happens when things fire out of order, is you don't see these speed gains between the segments of the body. So when you send us footage, we can see, like, okay, do you have some problems with your sequencing? Do we have some problems with how much speed are we creating between our pelvis and our arms and our hands? And we can measure this to see if you have a problem. And then we can give you drills and exercises to fix that. But first we have to know what the problem is, or we can't offer to fix anything, okay? Especially from a power production standpoint. So that is what a power leak is, or at least an example of one of them. And they'll happen, like there's different ones that leak out power from the pelvis to the arm, different ones from the arm to the hand. There's the wrist to the arm. There's like a bunch of them, right? Like 30 of them. And so when you send in footage, we like to use our software and we analyze them all and we find out where your athletes are. So that is what makes it so that Jose Altuve can compete with Aaron Judge's, is they got that part right. They have to be more efficient as a little person to still hit home runs. And so they do that stuff better. So if you're looking for somebody to copy, I would lean more towards copying little hitters instead of big hitters if you're wanting to hit for more power, because the little hitters, especially if they're in the home run club, like 20, 25, 30 home runs a year, they have to do things better than an Aaron Judge. He's strong enough. He doesn't have to be efficient. Okay, so now let's talk about a couple different phases of the swing. One that there are often power leaks in. One is the load phase of the swing. Okay, so in the load phase of the swing, and we would do this for your athlete if you want to send us in footage so we can see where theirs are. And there's a lot of detail here that it'd probably take me 3, 4, 5 hours to go through all of them. So I'm just going to kind of cut to some of the big ones. But in the load phase is when you start to go back into your rear leg, like Bryce Harper here, and you want to see the pelvis start to coil towards the catcher. So that belt buckle, as he's getting back into his back leg, is starting to coil around his rear leg. This is an assessment I did. This gal sent in this footage. And what you'll notice when she swings, her pelvis doesn't go backwards. She rocks backwards, but there's no coil. She just steps forward, okay? And she was swinging about 37.6 miles an hour. She went on our training program. She trained for 2 months, and now she came in. She's going to swing this bat 53.5 miles an hour right here. Same gal. And what you're going to notice, now we are not done fixing all the things with her swing. She's got more power to have. But what you'll notice, look at this. See the coil now? She has a coil now before she starts to stride that she didn't have here. And so that made almost 13 miles an hour difference. Now, there's some other things that we did as well, but that was the biggest thing that really allowed her pelvis to start to fire faster. And we measured it so that we could actually know that it was firing faster with the software that we have. So we can actually see where these things are. So you'll fix some things, and then she comes back and we look at it, the swing again, and we find out, okay, where's the next leak we need to work on? And we keep hammering on these things. And that's how we consistently are able to help kids add 30 to 50 feet to how far they can hit the ball, those sorts of things. Okay. Especially in the softball community, they often talk about, oh, that's a negative load. We don't want to teach that. That will make it so they can't catch up to fast pitching. So I just want to take 30 seconds to address this real quick. First of all, who's heard that before? Let me know in the chat if you have heard that before. This is Major League Baseball at some level. This looks like Pirates on his inner squad, but this is almost uncertainly, a pitcher that's throwing over 90 miles an hour. And this hitter right here is hitting. He has to pick his leg up. It's reaching the peak of his leg lift when the ball is, I missed it. When the ball is still in the pitcher's hand. So when he is at the peak of his leg lift, the ball's still in the pitcher's hand. So he's getting the load out of the way early, and that's the key. And we'll talk about that on day 2 and 3 for how we time that stuff up and help you learn how to do those things. But so that you can hit velocity. But a 70-mile-an-hour softball thrower and a 90-mile-an-hour baseball thrower actually take a very similar amount of time to react to the pitch. So you should never, if somebody's telling you can't have a negative load, you absolutely can. Otherwise, all the hitters in the big leagues wouldn't do it. You just have to make sure that you're doing it by loading early and on time and under control. And then we can hit for velocity and power. Okay. So just a quick little thing that comes up there. The next leak that we look for is something is in the stride phase. So here's an example of a gal. She's going to hit a bomb. She goes opposite field. I love looking at opposite field home runs because you have to do things even more mechanically correct. But what you see here is she's also going to coil that hip. She's open. We see more of her left butt pocket. And as she gets the foot down, toes almost going to touch. The right elbow and the hand are right at shoulder height, pulling back. Her front shoulder's lower than her back shoulder. We'll get into why that matters in a second. And the knob of her bat, which you can't see right here, but you can pretty much imagine it's pointing right at the catcher. This is the ideal launch position. And if you look at a bunch of different Hall of Fame and all-star pitchers, you will notice all of their front shoulders are lower than their back. All of their barrels, the knob of the bat, if it had a flashlight on it, would be shining on the catcher. And all of their hands and elbows are right around shoulder height. Nobody's got their elbow tucked into their ribs. When their front toe lands, this is a similar position that all these guys get to. So there's a reason they all get to this, and that is because the body has what's called fascial lines. Fascia is a tissue that when quickly stretched and then flexed, acts like a rubber band that makes your body more springy than your muscles would normally be capable of being. So like kangaroos have a lot of this in their bodies. And this is a system of the body that can be trained, but you have to kind of be aware of it or else you're not going to be able to train it. So the reason that we want to have, for example, the launch position where a right-handed hitter, I guess it doesn't matter what kind of hitter, but the hitter's arm is her top hand is pulling up and back is so that we're stretching the upper part of the fascial line as we pull it back. And the problem that we'll see is like this hitter. This is a hitter who is lowering her hands as her front foot is landing, and the elbow is lower. The front shoulder is higher. So we are not pulling up and back on the top. It's her right, but on the left side of the picture or the image here, we're not pulling up and back on that part of the fascial line. So we're not going to get that stretch. The stretch shortening cycle boost that we could get if we did. You can also see from behind, she is got a vertical forearm instead of a forearm that is pulling up and back. And she's going to set up to use her arms, is typically what happens with kids who do this, to pull through the zone instead of trying to twist her body in the right order. This is an example of where she is leaking power out in the stride phase of her swing. Okay. Then we get into the launch phase. The launch phase is, there's a lot to it, but one of the things is, back to the fascial lines, let's stretch the bottom half of that fascial line that's running across our body. So if there's a rubber band attached from our front hip to our rib cage, we want our pelvis, like Freddie Freeman is doing, to open here as our hands are still pulling up and back. So you can see he's pulling up and back, and as he's opening his pelvis, and that's stretching that fascial line. That allows him to access this system to help him rotate more explosively. But what often happens is kids like this one, as her heel is getting into the ground, her hands are moving forward. She's taken all the slack out of her system, and so she's not accelerating the bat quickly. We can actually tell that because you can't read this. It's a little fuzzy. This says rotational acceleration with the bat sensors that we use, and it's only generating 2 G-forces. And normally when kids swing in the right order, they're generating over 8. So she's getting really low speeds. When you send us in footage from your software, if you haven't done that yet, by the way, just like it's a 14-day free trial that then rolls into a membership program that's $97 a month, where we continue to we evaluate your swing on a monthly basis. You have a spot to send us video. We can watch you. We give you custom programming to do all these drills, and we don't ask that you invest anything in it until like you sign up for free. You send us video footage of your kid's swing. We run it through our software. We can give you these answers. We show you where all their leaks are, and then we even give you the drills. And then we let you videotape yourself trying the drills. We give you feedback on the drills, all for 14 days for free, so that you can get all of this stuff. Because otherwise, like, to take the time to give you every drill for every problem, like this would be a 30-hour presentation. So you have to make sure you get this stuff right for your kid, and you're not just copying some cookie cutter program for somebody else's. At least that's our approach. That's worked really well. Now I've got this here because one of the ways that you train the fascial system to be more explosive is with plyometric training. So this is super known for training the fascial system of the legs, which is what this guy's doing. It's a really big example of a drop jump or depth jump. Forget which one it's called. But you're putting a ton of force, and he's training his calves to be very, very springy. We could do this for all the other areas of the body too. And there's these different stretch shortening cycles in a hitter's body that we have to train to do this way. Okay. And so we can do that by training the systems to be faster. We'll talk about a little bit of that here in a second. And then we get into the swing phase. This is where some other power leaks happen. Okay. So what we want to have happen in the swing phase, for example, is we want the right hip to rip forward first and pull the back foot off of the yellow line as the front leg is straightening and the belt buckle is pointing towards the pitcher. And if you will notice, these hitters are all the way into their front leg. The front leg is violently straightening and their back leg is getting unweighted. So you're not in this balanced position. If you're like a lot of times, and I hate it, they say be balanced. It's like these guys are violently rotating, and there's a way to do this without falling over, of course. But this isn't balanced. This is 100% of the weight on the front leg. We're doing it in a way so we don't fall over and we maintain control. Control and balance are two different things. Okay. So anyways, that's what's going on here. Let me show you some examples. So this is a gal we assessed. Notice how we draw a foot on her right line and a line on her right foot. We see that her right hip is not pulling the back foot forward off the line. So she's not getting a thrust of her right hip, and her left leg is bending. And so the problem with bending is like this. See, this is my daughter. She's on a trampoline, and I'm asking her to jump when I clap, and she tries to jump. And when you try to jump on a squishy surface, you end up not going anywhere. She doesn't get hardly a centimeter off of the ground because all the energy is going down when she's pushing because it's squishing. So when you have an athlete who is bending their front leg, that's like jumping off of a trampoline, but without the bouncing of the trampoline. It's just like squatting down on a trampoline and jumping on a squishy surface, or standing on a mattress and trying to jump without bouncing. All the energy bleeds out. You don't go anywhere. So we don't want to do that. So we want to train the leg to be stiff. Okay. So starting to realize why your kid might not be hitting to their full power potential. Who is noticing that, by the way? Are you seeing some things? Like, put in the chat, what are you guys seeing that's like, ooh, my kid does that. All that kind of stuff. Let me know what you see, if this is helping raise your awareness about anything that's going on with your kid swings. Hopefully it is. I'll be checking these back here in a second. But okay, so now, how do we actually fix this stuff? Okay, so I really, really, really believe in something called constraint-based drill design. So just telling your kids, hey, don't do that, or just do this, is not a super effective way to do this. Who here has asked their kid to do something and they didn't do it? Right? Or who's told their kid not to do something and they still did it? And even repeated yourself multiple times and they still did it, right? Me. Probably a lot of you guys too. Typically, the only people that work for that are people with a really high level of body awareness. And typically, they are the kind of people who are really athletic, because those are the kind of people that are easier to train. But it only works for like 1 out of 10 athletes. And so we really like a different way of training. So we like to, instead of telling an athlete what to do and what not to do, we like to create training environments that force them to move the way we want them to move without them having to think about it. So to give you an example, this is my daughter. But it was when she was 6 or 7. I forget how old she is here, but bad swing, right? Straight down choppy. Every ball hit was just like this, a little dinker. And I tried to tell her, hey, you got to swing a little bit more up, a little bit more level. Try to, change your swing so it's more up. She refused to do so. So I got this idea. I don't know where I got this idea from, but we called it rooftop wiffle ball. So I come home one night and I put a bunch of tees out in front of the driveway. And I goes, who wants to hit wiffle balls on the roof? And all my 5 kids come piling out the door, my daughter included. And this is what it looks like. We say go. And they try to hit wiffle balls on the roof. So this daughter here, she hits one in the bush. The youngest one of them all blasts one over. It gets chaotic. It's you can time this up to see who wants to be the first one who can hit the most home runs. And what happened is really quickly, my daughter learned that she was pounding the ball into the grass, into the driveway, not getting it onto the roof. She had to make a change to how she was swinging if she wanted to not get her butt kicked by her 6-year-old little brother. And so she very quickly made a change after like 5 minutes and figured out how to hit the ball onto the roof without any cueing from me. You can change the way your kid moves by changing the way you design the drill. Now, let's say, for example, you're looking at this, you're like, oh yeah, what a dumb game. This is going to teach kids to fly out too much. Okay, so I'll give you that. Like for this little guy, he's my littlest one. He drops his hands and swings straight up. So what we would do if I was designing the drill for him is it would be an out if it went over the roof, and it'd only be a hit if it bounced off of the side of the house before it hit the grass, promoting a line drive, right? So you can change the game and he will change his behavior because he's going to keep hitting the ball over the roof and getting out if he keeps swinging up like that. So what you want to do is you want to add constraints and design constraints that are specifically focused on fixing a certain swing flaw. Okay. So that's how we design our training workouts, and it's beautiful. It works awesome. So like, for example, if we go through the 4 phases of the swing, and we saw we had no hip coil on the load and no scap retraction in the stride and didn't fire the hips first, we have a bent lead leg, whatever, then I've got a whole library. And that's another reason you should sign up for the trial of our Power Hacking membership program, because in there we have this whole library for all of our favorite drills and all of our favorite constraints that match up to help kids fix all the different movement problems that they have. And so they're really effective when you match them correctly. And so we prescribe the drill the pivot drill, the Mike Tyson drill, the twisted flamingo drill, the slippery board drill, whatever their issue is. Now we use this prescriptive method we find the flaws, and then we match them with a drill that gives them a constraint so they find a new feel, and that becomes their 4 or 5 or 6 drill package that ends up fixing the problem. Even if like honestly, even if I'm not there, just knowing what drill to do right. And yeah, you got to kind of know how to have them cue it right, which is why when you sign up for a free trial of our membership, we let you send us in videos. And then I'm in there in the members area and I'm explaining like what you should try to cue them to do. I get to watch you do the drills to make sure they're doing them right. But basically, once you kind of know how to do the drill right, the drill fixes the problem on its own. And then you don't end up having like this fighting match between the coach or the parents and the kid. And you can really get a lot of good results. So that's what we do. So I forgot why I have this slide here. Oh yeah. This is an example of all the different things that we do this for. So there's actually 30 of them, or I think it's 27, and a little bit more that aren't here. But when you send us in footage, we run it through our software. And like, as you can see, when this cycles back again, it turns your body into a stick figure, and we measure how your body's moving throughout space with all the different things. And so then we'll look at all these things like side bend at contact is only 26.8 degrees. Okay. Is that a good range? Is that a bad range? It shows you if it's a yellow flag, a red flag, a green flag. And now we go pick whatever ones are the biggest problems for your power or for different contact quality stuff. But we're talking about power right now. We'll give you we'll identify the biggest 4 or 5 problems and then create a custom drill program for you with all those constraints so that you can target them. And then when you do that, because that's this kid, that's why I put this video in here. This is a kid who we did this with. We identified the flaws. We created a program for him. You can see he's firing out of order too. His pelvis went first. His hands went second. His other thing went third. I've never met this kid in my life. Besides just watched his video. He sent it in for a free assessment. We recorded him. He went and did the programming, and he ended up hitting this. He had a goal to go to the Cal Ripken World Series. I think it's Cal Ripken. And hit Cooperstown World Series and hit a home run. Well, he obviously did right here. That's the same kid. He didn't just do this, though. He ended up hitting 3 home runs. So he way overshot his goal. And the reason I share this is because, guys, I didn't ever coach this kid. So many people are like, oh, yeah, I think he'll get better results with a coach. And the problem is the coaches create cue salads, and they try to when you use constraints, you don't need to do that. You just give them the right drill and it will change the behavior. And then when we use our software to constantly monitor it, make sure it's working, and we know the drills are actually working because we're measuring it, then you get results like this. So it's a really cool thing. So, and again, never met this kid in my life, and he's able to get results like that. He obviously put in the work. but he just followed the program that we made for him. So one problem with this though, only 1 in 100 kids is actually coordinated enough to do like all of the advanced moves correctly, and mine included. Okay, and you shouldn't let this scare you, but you've seen uncoordinated kids, right? You got that one kid who's like the dude or the dudette, whatever you call the female version of dude. The studs, right? They get it. They find everything easy. And then there's a spectrum of kids who like, it's not that easy, right? Whether they're wobbly or they're weak or they're unflexible or whatever. So we need to address this and be aware of this, because this was something my son wasn't coordinated enough to do. My daughter probably was in most of the things, maybe not 1 in the 100, but maybe in the top 10%. My son was like bottom 20%. Okay. And so we needed to fix some things. So, I forgot what I was saying. Yeah. Okay. So the reason this happens is because there's neural pathways that haven't been turned on yet, and we need to know how to activate them. Okay. So, and bear with me here. This makes sense. I, in middle school, could not do this. Okay. I could not do the stupid little Trekkie thing. Forgive me if you love Star Trek. Maybe it's a fine show. I've never really gotten all the way into it. Watched a couple movies that were good, but anyways, I couldn't do this. I remember being made fun of on a school bus because I couldn't do this. I was like, I couldn't make the fingers go right. I couldn't do it, but I can now. So I had the neural pathways available in my hand. If you've ever tried to do this and you can't, that's the same thing's happening with you. You can do this, but the neural pathways are not built. And so I went home and I like held my fingers apart, and I was a dork, and I practiced for like 3 weeks, and I ended up being able to do this. I was able to turn the neural pathways on. Well, it turns out that this is something that you can do with your athletes too, and they've done a lot of research on this. So I got this advice from somebody who I respected, who was evaluating my son, and they said, wow, he's not coordinated enough. We recommend you get him with a coach who can teach him how to do some key movements in the weight room. So this is him at 10 or 11, where he started to learn how to lift properly. And by lift, I don't mean a lot of weight. He's got a little bit of weight here, but we're not crushing him. He's learning how to move. And let me explain. So there's this article. If you go to National Library of Medicine and you search "How young is too young to start training," you can find this article. You can also search PubMed, "How young is too young to start training," and this will show up. And here's, you go look that up if you want to, but here's the short version of what's going to happen. There are 7 movements, and there's actually an 8th that's not on this list, specifically with how to throw a baseball or softball, or just throwing. It's not on this one. But these movements, if you do not learn how to do these, lower body bilateral, lower body unilateral, acceleration, deceleration, reacceleration, landing, rebounding, core bracing, if you don't learn how to do these before puberty hits, this is what happens to your strength potential. The blue line is what happens to kids if they start learning this stuff pre-adolescence. They end up with, I don't know, what is this, 20%, 30, 40, I don't know what this is, but it's a lot more neuromuscular performance potential than they do if they wait until puberty has started. And then there's this group of people who are like, oh yeah, well, we play multiple sports. We believe in athletic development. It's like, okay, sure. I like multiple sports too. I'm not the like only play one sport person, but what I do realize is that's misleading. That's not what creates the athletes. What creates the athletes is learning the new movement patterns. Multi-sport makes you a little bit better, but learning all of these is what's key before puberty. And so you need to be able to do that. Now, here's what's really cool about this. I can't remember if I did this. Well, I'll get to it in a sec. Okay. So let's talk about some examples. So a ton of people can't do a push-up, for example, okay? So this is one of the movements, a pressing movement. And you'll notice this is a kid who is, his elbows are never getting up above his back. And so when we ask these kids to do movements, what they will do is, like, this is my son and my daughter throwing. My son's elbow is pulling behind his back. My daughter's elbow is pulling behind their back. They're both known as very hard throwers. Well, guess what the kid who does the bad push-ups throws like? When he throws, his elbows in front of his chest, because his body is avoiding the movements that he is weak in or uncoordinated in. And so he's moves and throws in a way where he doesn't pull his arm back. But if you will put kids in drills like this is a scap activation drill. So if we put a quarter on a kid's spine, we sit them like this and we ask them to try to pinch their shoulder blades together. Half of the kids like 10 and under, can't squish their shoulder blades together. My daughter, the athletic daughter, was not able to do this part of her movement when we first started. She just didn't know how to activate that part of her back. So what do you think happens when we ask her to throw? She's not quite as good at it as my son. She's younger, still working on it, but like that's what's going on. And so you need to learn how to activate these neural pathways in all of these 7 different movements. And that's what can create the ability for the athletes to do stuff. So when we're asking them to hit, let's see, do I have another example? Yeah. So here's an example. So on the right, Gleyber Torres, he's hitting. You see how his back is straight? But on here, when this kid's looking up, his back is rounded right as he's picking up. So he can't hinge in the hips well. So when he hits, he looks like on the left. He doesn't look like the guy on the right. He's got a rounded back. It's an unoptimal position. His body's avoiding it. If this kid can't do a reverse lunge correctly, so notice how he goes onto the top of his foot. He's putting about 90% of his weight on the front. He's trying to reach up, and he can't balance on his back leg. He doesn't have the control, the stability. The neural pathways aren't built yet, and so he's wobbly. So he uses one leg. So when he hits, like, how is he supposed to look like this when we are going to try to violently straighten one leg, be completely stable on one leg while we're rotating if we can't do a reverse lunge? And the answer is we can't. So that's why a lot of kids will do weird stuff. It's because they're trying not to fall over because they don't have the neural pathways built yet. And you got to fix it before 12. That's why it's hard to change old habits. It's because the neural pathway window for development has been missed. So you don't want that to happen. Can you brace your core? So this is super common when you see kids do planks and push-ups. See how he's got a saggy back right here versus straight? It sags. So this turns into this. This girl has a saggy back because she can't brace her core as she starts to rotate. You see her arch back. So all of these little habits are caused because those 7 movement patterns haven't been built properly, and you need to make sure that you're including them. You need to have somebody look at your athlete. You need to be able to have a person that can identify, ooh, you don't brace in your core well. Ooh, you have poor single leg stability. Ooh, you don't rotate well. And these sorts of things, okay? Can you control your pelvis? This is another test that's constantly being failed. We get them on a yoga ball. We ask them to roll up on one side of their body, then roll up on the other. This gal just falls off the ball. She can't do it. So how can we expect her to rotate her pelvis when she can't stay on a yoga ball? The answer is it gets tough to do. So when we see problems, what most hitting coaches do is they're like, oh, just do this or don't do that. It's like, well, bud, they can't actually do what you're talking about. So when they can't do it, they can't do this, right? But the athletic version of this, then what are you going to do? And the answer is, oh, they're not listening or they're not trying hard enough. They don't care hard enough. But most of the time, they need like a little bit of movement prep or a little bit of post-work hitting workout movement stuff or a little bit of time in the weight room, not with a lot of weight. Pre-puberty doesn't need weight. It needs movement quality. And so we need to give that to them as they're working out. Okay. So these are all power leaks. And so if we want kids to hit better, we have to be able to master all these different movement patterns. We need to look at what's wrong with the power leaks in their swing, learn how to give them the ability to actually do all those movement patterns so that the constraints will actually work. The training starts to happen so they can do things correctly. And then we need to train once we've taught them how to move correctly, which is what those first 2 things are. We know what's wrong. We need to fix why it's wrong so they have the coordination to do it. Now we need to train them to be as explosive in that movement pattern as possible. And that's about training the central nervous system. So this was the main thing that was a part of that course that I originally got when I was a sophomore in high school that trained me. Literally, I never even had anybody that showed me how to do stuff. They just gave me the drills that fixed what usually worked, and it ended up working wonderfully for me because they had the right constraints. But the reason that it was so effective is because your body has slow twitch muscle fibers and fast. Slow twitch are good for like things like endurance, like this gal jogging. Fast is things for things like explosiveness, like sprinting. Okay, this is an example of. Let's see, which one is this? So the right at the top. The blue is slow twitch muscle fibers. The green is fast twitch. So this is a muscle tissue that is about 50-50. And a certain percentage of your body is convertible to the other kind. And so after training, what happens if you look down here, this is now like 75% green or 70% green. We've been able to take and double the amount of fast twitch of the body had by training it in a certain way. That is best done by doing what we call overload underload training or swing plyometrics. And so these are taking the different areas of the swing, whether that's the lead shoulder, it's the torso, it's the lead leg, it's all these different areas. And we use overload, underload implements and training principles to train the body to go faster. And when you do that over a course of a 5 to 12 week period of time, that's the time window that you can change slow twitch muscle fibers to fast twitch. It's a nervous system thing, and it's a tissue thing, and training it to fire faster. You're not actually gaining any muscle. Like, you can just get faster by training the nervous system to do this over the course of 5 to 10 weeks, or 5 to 12 weeks, which is why that's what we offer, because we see kids make a huge gains when we train their nervous system to do this. And she's holding an overload bat right there, which is one of the implements that we use to do overload, underload training. And then they've studied this stuff, right? So this is done on college athletes, but who did overload, underload work. But this group saw an 8% increase. This was a 6 and a 10 and an 8.2. And so all the time, every time that they study this stuff and see, can you actually train the body to fire faster? Like, they're only able to prove that it works 100% of the time. Yet you hear people say that you can't do that out there, which is just nonsense. So when my daughter did this, the biggest gain that we did this one was right before she hit puberty. We did all this movement stuff. She came in, she was 12 at 53.7 miles an hour bat speed. We were doing another drill here as well. That's why she's kind of off the camera, a timing drill, but she came in at 53.7. She did this. Her program was 8 weeks. 8 weeks later, she came in, she got this speed, generated 60.6 miles an hour. And if you don't know, every mile an hour that you can add to how fast you can swing, the ball ends up being able to potentially go 6 feet further. So you end up training this crazy amount of bat speed. Now, keep in mind, she's 12. She's about to go into 13, and she's looking at, like, she's above high school JV. She's at the top of high school varsity bat speeds as a 12-year-old, even though she was small. She's like, I don't know what she was there, 5'1", 5'2", something like that. Second smallest girl on her team. And she's generating high school varsity bat speeds. Now, a girl can do more than that. I'm not saying that she's the best, but that's pretty good at 12, okay? Then we got that. She goes down. I've already showed this clip, but what I didn't share with you earlier is, can we agree she basically pops this ball up to right field? I mean, it leaves the screen, and it doesn't go out by a lot. These are probably 200-foot fences. I don't actually know, but it's probably what it is. And it gets out over the fence. But if she had hit that ball 8 weeks earlier, it would have gone 40 feet, 45 feet less. It would have traveled 40, 45 feet less, and it would have just been a fly out. So this was a grand slam that ended up being an amazing moment for us, which I think I have a picture. Yeah. So I'm happy, Dad. I still tear when I think about it, because I love this stuff, giving these memories and sharing them with the kids. But who else cries when their kid hits home runs? Just me. So good moment that was able to be created because we did the 8-week thing. We just put her in the drills. We followed all these principles, and she just followed the workouts, and she can hit the ball 45 feet further. She ends up having this kind of power. So also worked with my freshman son. As a freshman, this is a week before he tries out. His bat speeds were up to 67 miles an hour. If you go look at where this is a chart of the baseball version, the other one was a softball version. 67 miles an hour is like top end of high school varsity speeds. This was his freshman year. He's a little bit older than that now, but he was able to build that because we followed the same methodology. So then as a freshman, I showed you the 370 to center foot one here. This one, I don't have a shot of the sign. If you go and Google Maps Bishop Kelly Field in Boise, Idaho, you will find that it's about 400 feet to center. And so he hits his first home run out deep to right center on a field that was 400 to center. So like most kids who hit home runs as a freshman, they get it down the line, but like that ball's going out right there, deep right center. So I don't know how far it went, maybe 380, maybe 390. I actually don't know, but it's the big part of the field. So all doable because we train this stuff. And follow these principles. Another thing that happens, and we'll cover these as we go through the different parts of the challenge, the trainings as we introduce these concepts to try to challenge you to add 5 miles an hour to your kids' bat speeds. But one of the things, but will they hit for average? And this was my son's freshman year. He hit 379. He didn't lead the team in average, but he led the team in OPS, which is the extra base hits and the average. And so 379 is not bad. as a freshman, excuse me. Another one that happens is, they'll just teach him to pull the ball and yank the ball and they'll strike out. Well, look at this. This is his spray chart from his freshman year. He's hitting the ball all over the field. Does he hit his ball furthest there? Yes. Yes, he does, but he hits the ball all over the field. And so when you train this stuff right, like we'll be talking about, we will have a day that's dedicated just to how to improve average. That's going to be on day 3. Make sure that you stay tuned for day 3 because that one's a game changer. Even if you don't do any of the power development stuff, which I don't know why you wouldn't do, pay attention to day 3 because it will absolutely improve your average when you add that stuff into it and help you bear up more balls. So this kind of stuff, just so we're clear, this works for softball, baseball, little leaguers, high schoolers, singles hitters, big kids, small kids, slow pitch softball to work with. If that's like what you're trying to do, we can analyze that as well. If you're like a dad who's doing that or a mom, position players, it basically only works for everyone, guys. So again, to kind of recap, there's 3 secrets to this. You have to plug and identify your power leaks. You need to then take advantage of the neural recruitment training windows where you're learning how to move in those 7 different movement patterns correctly. And we identify which ones those are so we can fix them. And then you need to add in swing plyometrics with drills that are done. We use constraint-based drills for how to teach you how to do those. So you're doing drills with overload, underload bats that are using those constraints. And when we tie all that together, that's what gets these results. So it just works only every time. But it only works when we can properly identify like what the problem is. So if you have not yet signed up for the free 14-day trial where you can send us in footage and we will analyze your son or your daughter's swing to find where the power leaks are in their swing, please do that. Do that. It's free for 14 days. There's a link to the page that has some other details about that I can send you to. I think it'll pop up here shortly. Hopefully I set that up right. But when you go do that, we'll analyze your swing and then we will give you all of our favorite drills for how to fix each of those things. It's totally different. There's over 1,500 different drills that we have with different constraints, but we have to match them up to what your athlete is doing if we want it to like work as well as it's worked for the kids that we've done it with, whether it's that kid who went to Cooperstown and hit home runs or whatever. So, or my own kids. And what we'll do from that, like I just kind of said, but we find the flaws in the swing from the assessment, and then we will prescribe the drills that fix each of those things. So they have workouts to follow that will get these results. And then we create those workouts. We send them to you like this, and we give you different options depending on the types of environments you're in. If you have a cage, great. If you don't have a cage, we'll give you just T workouts. When I did this as a sophomore, I only had what's it called? Swing away. Like I didn't have a cage. I just did the workouts in the winter. It was snowy in Spokane, Washington. I would do these every winter and it was just off the tee. And that's what trained me to move faster. So it doesn't matter what kind of environment you have. We will give you the drills for your environment. We can do more if you do have like your own cage or a facility you go to. We can do less, but like I'll message you once you sign up for the free trial and we'll figure out what ones you need, but we'll give you these workouts so that you can actually go and practice them. And then what I want to talk about tomorrow is this gets into the weeds. Okay. So I realize we have busy schedules. Your kid plays multiple sports. You might have multiple kids. You're in season, you're in off season. Like, I don't know where different areas of the world and the country play, Southern California plays year round. Other people don't, in the Northeast. Right. So there's different times. So how do you get all of this in? When do you do this? What about when you train for batting contact quality issues? Well, we have different phases for the different periods of the season. If you are in the first month of off season, then we have what we recommend that you do. And there's a progression that we go through. When do you switch to contact quality? If you are in a mid-season right now and you don't have extra time because your team's practicing too much, we switch the programming so that it's more like game prep stuff, but like that's what I'm going to share with you on day 3, game prep stuff, so that like even if you don't have a lot of time, you're totally busy with the other stuff, like how can you take whatever you are and improve your in-game performance when you don't have a lot of time to train? So we're going to be getting into all that and how to like lay out like the perfect calendar year depending on how much you want to train and how long your training year is or your playing year is and the different seasons. Like we're going to lay all that out tomorrow. So if you do have questions about like how we're going to do that, I'd love to address them tomorrow. Put them into the chat right now. Like specifically, if you've got any questions about like what you'd like me to address when we go into how we program and schedule this stuff, maybe how much time you have available to do things, you know, all that kind of stuff. But I can address that tomorrow, and that's what we're going to be covering. And that is what I have for today. So hopefully you got a lot of value out of that. Hopefully you now understand how we need to identify the power leaks and how we go about setting up this programming to work. You've got free access for 14 days to send me your footage so I can give you all the drills and analyze where your athlete is wrong. I'd recommend you do that now before we start tomorrow, and then we can have some more conversations tomorrow with the training. Tomorrow we're going to talk about how to schedule it all in and like what do you actually do in each of these training sessions? How do you get it all in? What are some programming tips? There's other software tools that I want to show you for what really works in season. And also like, what kind of tools do you need to pull this off? So we'll be talking about my favorite ones for that. There's definitely a couple of tools you might want to consider getting that helps make all this stuff work. And we'll be talking about all those tomorrow. So that is all for today. Go ahead. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'm a little over time. So I will email you back the answers to the questions. So put them in the chat here. My assistant will send them off to me, and I will get back to you here shortly after the presentation is over, and she sends those to me with any questions that you have. But that is all for now. Hopefully you love this, and I look forward to seeing you back here again, same time tomorrow, guys, and we will talk then. Have a good one.